used to either be, thank you, in the past it used to be a isolated or a specific event, whether in cybersecurity or in terrorism or a tsunami, and it impacted a particular area. This one has been pervasive and its impact across the globe in almost every aspect of our lives. And it's important that, not only do we learn from the, not only this disruption, but from every disruption, we will make the necessary changes. Supply chain professionals have that competency, they have that capability. The challenge that we have right now is that this is impacting every aspect, from the raw materials to production, to delivery, to support. And there isn't an aspect of supply chain that hasn't been hit. Challenge that we have, among the challenges that we have, is that it hasn't responded really well to the surges or the spikes in demand that we've seen across the globe, whether it be in consumer packaged goods or personal protection equipment or in pharmaceuticals. We've seen the disruption have a significant impact on global trade as well as domestic operations and domestic sourcing of products and services. So the shift that we've seen in the, sort of before the disruption and during the disruption right now has had a significant impact on organizations, not only on their perspective of what long-term sustainability means, but current, being able to withstand this current disruption so that we have an opportunity on the backside to make the necessary changes and respond to the different types of supply chain disruptions, specifically in this coronavirus or this pandemic. The challenge that, among the challenges that we've seen, is that we were not prepared as a global supply chain for the type of disruption that this affected, not only in terms of planning, but in terms of coordination between local and national authorities. The particular issue is that every country is dealing with it separately. This is not treated as a combined effort. It is treated as a local effort where each country is taking its own precautions and its own activities. When we're dealing with a pervasive disruption like this, it would have called for a much more coordinated response to a pandemic like this. But here we are, and we're, every country is seeing a different level, and we're trying to learn from the previous activities of the other countries as well as the other companies in terms of what we need to do to respond not only today, but more importantly for the future. It's important to note that as it was in the past, it is today. Coming out of this, it's going to be supply chain professionals as really enabling organizations to respond and to adapt to the disruptions that we're facing right now. We will rely on our healthcare professionals to make sure that we are safe and that we can not only mingle, but go about our daily lives with a safe and healthy attitude, not only in terms of meeting people, but in terms of the spread of this coronavirus. The supply chain will get us back on the economic support. Healthcare will make sure that we're healthy. Supply chain will make sure that we do have an economy and a robust economy. It's important to remember that before the disruption, we had a very efficient supply chain almost across the globe. We had high levels of employment. We had a very well-functioning and very well-harmonized supply chain. The focus on talent development and using supply chain as a competitive advantage was well on its way, and we started to see supply chain professionals moving into leadership positions in organizations so that they can affect strategic imperatives for supply chain through the organization. So what we had anticipated and what our focus was for ASEM was to really recognize and reward supply chain professionals, not only for the competencies and their capabilities, but for the success that they've been driving their organizations. And we've seen it in compensation across the board, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But it was a very robust time for supply chain professionals. However, we did see a challenge in terms of the number of employees and the gap, the shortage that we had in finding and retaining supply chain professionals. So take a look at this. This was before the pandemic. So in the US, we indicated that 40% of the employers said they could not find individuals. 1 in 6 supply chain professionals were ready to work. That means we had a significant gap between the competency and the capabilities of the individuals that were coming into the job with the expectations that the employers were having. You see the employee turnover. That also is a function of poaching, that individuals are being poached from one organization to another. So this has become a specific challenge when you see that there is a shortage not only of the number of individuals, but the competency of the individuals. So therefore, individuals that did demonstrate competency were rewarded significantly from their organizations, but we did see quite a bit of poaching from one employer to the other versus them training their own. And then finally, we take a look at that turnover rate, and that is that a lack of development opportunities and supportive management. I think we've all encountered situations where we don't see an opportunity for advancement, or the organization is not willing to invest in your career development. Those are challenges within organizations. But I also want to point out that in this disruption, significantly different than the disruption that we had in 2008, 2009, when we had the financial crisis. At that point, it was within the first 6 months that we started to see organizations pull back on professional development, on mentoring, on membership into associations or NGOs. This disruption was significantly different. Almost 100% of our corporate clients within the first month delayed their training. They did not cancel it. That's a significant change from what we've seen in the past in disruptions, that more often than not, organizations were among the first things to get cut were professional development and membership and their commitment to staff. And that's a challenge. When you take a look at what organizations would indicate is their number one asset, I think rightfully so, the majority of them would indicate that employees were their number one asset. Well, if we all do asset rationalization, what do you invest in your best and your worst of times? And that's your number one asset. Well, we started to see it when organizations and the economy was booming. We started to see organizations invest heavily into their workforce. What's really heartening this time is that organizations have committed to maintaining their development and their training for their workforce, albeit it has been delayed. And I think it's understandable the challenges that organizations are having right now, just staying in business and maintaining their workforce without the additional commitment of workforce development. Individuals are working extremely hard, those that do have ongoing employment commitments. And to the organizations, their focus on employee development in this particular pandemic has been significantly different. And I think that bodes well for the backside of this disruption, that we will see quite a bit more hiring of supply chain professionals on every level, from entry level all the way to senior leadership. But we have to make sure that we have a prepared, capable, competent workforce available for their organizations. So a little bit of background. I think most of you have a good understanding of what ASCM is. It grew out of Apic in the 60 plus years that we've had as an organization. So we have, as a company, focused on the supply chain professional, that man or that woman who is driving the organization traditionally from the back offices, traditionally not a front office function. We obviously have a bias towards strategic leadership for supply chain professionals. And we believe that either chief supply chain professionals or global supply chain professionals, more importantly, having them sitting at the table with the C-suite, the CEO, CFO, COO, and developing the strategies and working in collaboration with the other professionals within their organizations to ensure that supply chain not only has the attention, but does make the necessary impact on their patients, on their consumers across the globe. We anticipated, and our focus prior to this pandemic was recognizing and having supply chain professionals move into the C-suite and driving organizations through their leadership and their competency across the globe. Obviously, we've seen a significant disruption, but more importantly, supply chain still has responded. When we started to see some of the surges and some of the shortages, supply chain did respond, although it did take time for it. But our focus as an organization has been to drive supply chain and create a better world through supply chain. And I know that sounds as a far-reaching goal, but that's the intent here, is to make sure that supply chain is recognized not only for the impact that it has, but for the benefit that it has for employees as well as organizations and economies alike. So let's get into some of the activities that we have as an organization. As I indicated, ASCM is the outgrowth of Apex as an organization. For 60 years, our focus was on the supply chain professional, that man or that woman in the back office driving their organization and making the necessary adjustments and response to not only economy, but to their consumer preferences, as well as the different variety and different manufacturing sort of improvements and innovations that they've been making. The focus for us was always on a competent, capable workforce, and that was through our global standards, our certifications. What we started to see, though, is that if we just train the individual, have we done our job? If they don't perform on a job, if they don't perform for an organization and make it better, have we done our job as an organization? And the simple answer is no. Training individuals in and of itself is a worthy cause, no doubt. Obviously, these individuals have a much better capability and capacity for their careers. But if it doesn't translate into corporate success, and if it doesn't translate into enabling organizations to serve their communities and their customers better or more efficiently, we really haven't done our job. So we expanded our focus over the past few years with the addition of Supply Chain Council, ASTNL, and other mergers into being an end-to-end organization that viewed supply chain the way that companies view supply chain, not as a segmented activity, but as an integrated, highly synchronized effort for an organization. So our focus was originally on the supply chain professional, and then it translated into the impact, well, corporate success. If we are truly measuring the impact of an individual, it has to translate into corporate success. And that means not only on an economic basis, but on an environmental and an ethical basis as well, to make sure that not only are we doing it right, but we're doing good for the economy as well as for the various metrics that we have in terms of a sustainable organization. So we embraced the idea that training an individual was just the first step in the journey. The second step in the journey was having them perform on the job and improving their organization's success and sustainability. And we thought that was it. If we can ensure that an organization has competent employees and they're performing and the organization is succeeding and it's meeting its metrics, we thought that was it. That was the end of our journey as long as the organization succeeded. What we learned very quickly was that that was only the second step. The third step was the impact that supply chain was having on the consumer, on the patient, and the globe and the economies alike. That it wasn't the activities, it was the outcome that supply chain was really driving at. And so we embraced the idea that supply chain can make a better world and that our focus is on making an impact through supply chain. So we haven't wavered from our original commitment to the employee. That has always been and will be our focus in ensuring that we have competent, capable employees. But it has to be matched with an organization that not only recognizes but rewards those individuals for the changes they make with the organization. And then finally, that we can see better economies, we can see better environment, and we can see more ethical activity and sustainable activity for organizations. This is how we view our role and our responsibility right now. To do so, we need the appropriate partners. And as Tanya was saying, that starts with our partnerships. And that starts with the partners that we have across the globe, such as sapix, that can not only understand the local requirements, but have the capabilities to meet those supply chain professionals' needs for networking, for training programs, for opportunities for career advancement. So this is a much more holistic approach that we've had over the past 3 to 4 years. Where did it start? It started with the supply chain professional in that back office, making the difference for the organization. So where we started from 60 years ago really hasn't changed. The center of our universe is still the supply chain professional. But more importantly, what we've embraced is the idea that we have a responsibility to the organizations that hire the supply chain professional, And more importantly, we have a responsibility to the community at large, both patients and consumers alike, to ensure that they have a sustainable, responsible, and accountable supply chain that provides not only the products and services, but does so in a sustainable manner. So let's get into some of the activities that we have and a little bit deeper into some of the solutions. Well, hold on, I think most of you are aware as to where we are as an organization and what we do. So a little bit of shout out for the metrics. We are the largest nonprofit association in the world. Pick your metric. If you want to pick annual revenue, if you want to pick a number of individuals, members, if you want to pick number of certifications, number of partners, reach, pick your metric. This is an extraordinary opportunity for supply chain, and we embrace the global nature of supply chain. And when you take a look at our volunteers, when you take a look at our partners across the globe, I think we can rightfully say that this organization represents almost every aspect of a global supply chain. And more importantly, our focus on developing and moving forward and trailing supply chain and being close to where organizations are taking supply chain is the hallmark of our organization. I think the supply chain industry as an association has lagged for quite a while. We used to lag for about 3 years. We don't have the luxury of time anymore to wait on innovation, whether it be artificial intelligence or blockchain. There are a whole number of innovations that are occurring in the marketplace right now. The goal for us is to be in lockstep with organizations that are driving where supply chain is moving into the future, and more importantly, our ability to aggregate and to develop content and to deliver it through our partners is still a focus for us. And more importantly, we believe that that will extend the reach of our organization through our global alliances and our collaborative efforts. So let's get into some of the products and services here. First was the solutions, as we indicated before. This is as much as it is on the individual as it is on the organization. And so when we review an organization's supply chain, the first and core aspect for us is talent development. For us, this is where supply chain starts and stops. That if you do not have a trained workforce, it's going to be extremely difficult to not only meet today's expectations, but more importantly, to respond to the disruptions and to respond to the opportunities that will present themselves in the future. We rightfully believe that a talented workforce can respond and oftentimes avoid the kind of disruptions that we're facing today. But more importantly, you need to continue to invest in your talent irrespective of market conditions. This is just not a function of when market conditions are good that we invest in our employees. That commitment has to be there irrespective of market conditions. And more importantly, your employees are watching, and you need to walk the talk. As I indicated before, if you asked every organization what their number one asset is, I think they would rightfully claim that their employees are. Well, then you need to back those words up with action. And more importantly, when you see economic challenges, when you see the disruptions in the marketplace, this is the time to double down on your talent development, not the time to pull back. Talent will get you out of this disruption. It does take time, but more importantly, ensuring that you have the right development and right trained workforce will ensure that we have a sustainable workforce. And that flows through to the other activities that we have. So if we start with talent development and we look at its impact on the community and we look at the impact on transformation for an organization, the goal is to create a sustainable supply chain. And that means economic, as well as ethical and environmental standards that organizations need to meet. Our focus is through our organization on the company as well as the individual enables us to have a conversation with the C-suite about what their transformation activities are, but more importantly, what kind of talent they need to execute on the job and maintain that and ensure that they are sustainable for the long run. Also want to point out that with the reintroduction of the ASCM Foundation, we really have found a cause that we can embrace, and we can see how supply chain does transform not only emerging economies, but frontier economies as well. Our work with the humanitarian and the public health supply chain in Africa has been a hallmark of our organization. And I will rightfully say that this really has transformed our organization. And it really is the foundation of making the impact. When we saw how the global health supply chain, the initiative through Glenda and her team in Africa, in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa, we've seen the impact the supply chain professionals can make at an entry level as well as at a strategic level for organizations. Not only proud of the work that we've done, but it will enable us to respond to the types of disruptions that we're facing today, and more importantly, will enable us to respond much quicker to the opportunities and to the challenges that we face in the future. When we take a look at our global standards, these are consistent with the investments that we've made over the years. Really the cornerstone of our organization, or the peak of our organization, is the certifications. And you'll see that these are industry standard certifications from CSCP to CLTD, CPIM, DDMRP, as well as SCORE-P. These have been not only in the market for quite a while, but they've stood the test of time in terms of their competency and their capabilities to enable individuals to not only gain the necessary competency, but recognized for it as well. Individuals with certifications are highly sought after, and when you take a look at job opportunities, oftentimes you'll see the certifications as either a preference or a requirement for individuals moving into supply chain careers. It's important to note that as we've developed over the past 6 or 7 years, our focus was on supply chain leadership, was on developing not only career opportunities, but career pathways for individuals. And we saw this as a calling card for Apic and ASCM, that individuals that belong to our organization and got certified not only recognized for the contributions they make, they were rewarded for those as well. So our focus was truly on those individuals that were entering supply chain as a career. It's important to note that our focus right now, because of the disruption, is on not only on the senior leadership and on entry level for supply chain careers, but more importantly for jobs. And that is entry level positions for individuals that have been displaced out of either retail or food or other industries that have been impacted significantly. There are a whole host of opportunities for individuals to get back into the workforce. It's important to note that we're not talking about career opportunities right now, we're talking about jobs. And that individuals need to have basic competencies to have access to opportunities today. And that includes logistics, transportation, distribution. There are opportunities for individuals. Our Principles on Demand content is a perfect way for organizations and for individuals to gain foundational knowledge, to get a job, to get back on the employment ranks. So as I indicated before, 2 months ago, we were having to explain supply chain to everybody. Now we're having to defend it to everybody in the marketplace. More importantly, we see a significant rush for individuals, for development, for training. And this can be done completely online, on demand, on any device in the, that you have available to you. Our focus used to be solely on that supply chain professional as a career. Our focus now is not only on those career aspiration individuals, but on individuals needing the competencies to get a job and get back on the employment ranks. So we've embraced entry level and individuals that do not have baccalaureate degree and may only have a high school degree. We embrace the opportunity to get those people back on the job and to get employment. This has been a devastation for a lot of industries. We see our opportunities not only on careers, but on job opportunities as well. You'll see a number of the different products and services that we have, from the dictionary to the digital score model. And I think we'll see quite a bit more on digital transformation. The digital capabilities model from Deloitte was introduced, I think, probably about 10 days to 2 weeks ago. I think this reflects our commitment to collaboration. I think most of you are very familiar with the Demand Driven Institute and the certification that they have, DDMRP. This embraces the concept that we are seeking, and we will recognize those certifications that we believe do enable individuals not only to differentiate themselves, but can enable their organizations to succeed much quicker and much more responsibly. So our focus will continue to be to develop those global standards, whether they've been developed within ESCM or outside. Our focus is on what the market requires, and more importantly, ensuring that supply chain professionals have the necessary resources and availability of content so that they can improve their career opportunities. The last of our focus areas is engagement, and this really is more like the beginning of our organization, and that is the enabling individuals to see that there is a network and that they do have opportunities for collaboration across the organization, and more importantly, that supply chain as an industry is quite unique. There is no job called supply chain. Just as there's no job called engineer. There are civil engineers, there are architectural engineers. Similarly, there is no job called supply chain. There are a whole host of jobs within supply chain, but more importantly, we need to have individuals recognize that they're part of an extraordinarily complex and diverse community. And to support those individuals, we look to not only our local chapters, but our local partners, and seeing that individuals do have different ways to connect. And I think what we're all recognizing is that Zoom is the preferred way to connect right now in lieu of face-to-face meetings. And obviously our focus is to make sure that we can get back in a safe, healthy environment, and that everybody is able to meet and to greet each other in a very healthy and a very safe environment. Obviously that's everybody's objective. But until we can do so, we'll continue to find different ways to support our members, whether online, through Zoom, or through other modalities that will keep them connected. It's important to note we're in this together. There is no part of the globe that has not been impacted by this pandemic, and we need to ensure that we are sustainable as an organization so that we can see the backside of this, and more importantly, that we can support the companies and the supply chain professionals in the way that they have come to expect, and more importantly, the way that the world has changed on the backside of this. We have a whole host of benefits for individuals in terms of their the competency as well as the content for an organization, and we'll continue to invest in the content. And there are a number of resources that are available that respond specifically to COVID and how to deal with the disruptions, some of the activities that organizations can make, and more importantly, what you can do on the backside of the recovery of this pandemic. So putting the pieces together, as I indicated, we started 60 plus years ago with talent. Our focus was on the individuals and enabling individuals to not only be recognized, but to see that their efforts are driving organizations forward. And you'll see that certifications is a great differentiation for individuals. And the way that we deliver it is through our partners and through membership for the organization. So you'll see where we started 60 years ago is really the place that we are today. We're still focused on supply chain professionals. We're still focused on the talent development, and more importantly, how supply chain professionals can transform organizations, can transform economies, and more importantly, can enable companies to meet and exceed consumers' and patients' expectations alike. This is our focus, and we believe through our partners and through the work that we do with companies as well as individuals that we can make a significant difference. So when we talk about our certifications, as I indicated before, the cornerstone of our certifications is CPIM. For over 40 plus years, it has developed subject matter experts and functional expertise for individuals. This really does differentiate individuals in the marketplace. Attaining the CPIM is a differentiator, not only in terms of competency and capabilities, but in terms of compensation as well. We'll get into some of those numbers in a second. But more importantly, those individuals that are recognized and that have earned the CPIM designation are truly recognized as subject matter experts within their field. The CSCP meant for more collaborative or more leadership positions in the organization. To me, the difference, as I'd like to explain between CPIM and CSCP, CPIM is about 1 mile wide and 10 miles deep. It is meant to make you a subject matter expert. It is meant to have you recognized for the specific competency that you have within planning, production, and capacity for an organization. CSCP is 10 miles wide and 1 mile deep. It is meant to give you a insight into every aspect of supply chain, but not meant to make you an expert in every one of the fields. This is meant for individuals that are looking into leadership or management position or collaboration across an organization. This is a wonderful opportunity for individuals to demonstrate their leadership and their competency across multiple disciplines. And oftentimes we'll see individuals that have moved up into leadership positions attain CSCP to help them not only drive the innovation, but to lead an organization into the future. Our latest certification that was introduced, I think back in 2017, 2018 was CLTD. This is on the heels of our merger with AST&L. We saw a significant gap in the marketplace relative to certification for individuals in logistics, transportation, and distribution. This allows individuals to be recognized for the competency in that specific vertical. And we've seen significant uptick on this from individuals, not only in supply chain, but in warehousing, in a number of different industries that have embraced this opportunity. Logistics, transportation, and distribution has taken on a significant increase in terms of importance over this pandemic. Organizations have been hiring beyond their capacity today in trying to identify how they can respond to the shifts in demand and in terms of distribution across the globe from an industrial, education, commercial environment into a home-based environment. So that means that the entire supply chain has to be resequenced from all the way from raw materials to production to transportation, distribution, and warehousing. We've seen a significant change within this industry, and we expect to see it coming out of this disruption. Quite a bit more focus on transportation, logistics, and distribution. We think this will continue to evolve over the years as we hopefully recover sooner than later from this pandemic. As I indicated before, our Principles on Demand, a wonderful opportunity for individuals to gain foundational knowledge. This is the broadest content that we have. It covers every aspect of supply chain, but in an introductory level. It is meant to give individuals insight and knowledge about the foundations of supply chain management, and from procurement all the way through recycling, reusing. Every aspect of supply chain is in there. But more importantly, it's not meant to be taken at, from front to back. It is a flexible, it is modular, so that you can pick and play on what courses that you want to study in. But more importantly, what we've seen is a lot of organizations review the content in there and pick out specific content areas, modules, and we can bundle those and deliver those to organizations as well as to public classes. This is an extraordinary opportunity, and we've seen significant uptick from organizations as well as individuals accessing this content to get back into the job market. A wonderful learning structure for individuals. It's self-paced. Individuals can use it on any device. It is an extremely flexible program that allows an individual to self-pace themselves, identify those areas where they need additional competency or capabilities, and to go through this. It's I will say that given the current environment, this product has turned into a significant opportunity for individuals to gain competency, to get back into the job ranks. While our focus has always been on careers, this focus is on foundational entry-level competency for individuals to get jobs within the supply chain. Hopefully this will provide them a springboard to additional career opportunities. So let's take a look at the end result here, and that is compensation. We talked a little bit before about the role, responsibility of the supply chain professionals. Well, are they recognized within their organization? And this is a study that we just completed, I believe last month, and we're getting ready to publish the results of this. So what you're seeing is not yet public, but it will be probably within the week or so. You'll see that supply chain professionals are compensated well for their contribution. You'll see in the 50th percentile those individuals that have or no certification to those that attained a certification, and there's a 20+% adjustment for individuals that have a certification versus non-certified individuals. It's interesting to note, oftentimes I'll speak to schools or individuals that are coming into the workforce. And they, when they take a look at this chart, they say, okay, I'm going to get my certification. I'm going to get, you know, that 25% increase in my pay. And what we have to do is temper their expectations and say, you get certified, you deliver, you enable the organization to be more successful, you meet your customers and your patients' expectations, and then you get rewarded. You don't get rewarded and then deliver. And so importantly, those individuals that are seeking certification, it's important to note the certification in and of itself does not get you the additional compensation. It's the contribution you make to your organization and to enable them, the company, to serve its customers and its patients alike. You will be rewarded, as indicated here. Those individuals that do attain a certification and that are contributing to their organization's success are being recognized and rewarded accordingly. It's important to note that prior to the pandemic, placement rates for individuals with supply chain degrees was over 90%. That means if you had a supply chain degree and you graduated with a supply chain degree, you were extremely sought after. More importantly, compensation was second only to engineers. So this is a function prior to this pandemic of a very constrained workforce. As I indicated in one of the first slides that we had here, is that this is a extremely attractive market for individuals to enter into, and it's not going to subside anytime soon. Prior to the disruption, our latest survey indicated that we'll have a shortfall within the US of approximately 2 million supply chain professionals by 2025. I'm hopeful that not only the recognition of supply chain, but the awareness of supply chain within the global economy will drive more individuals seeking these job opportunities, and more importantly, looking to make a difference for not only their career, but for the organization as well. And so our hope, and that is that we do see the end of this disruption soon, but more importantly, that we can see that supply chain can respond and that it can enable us as an economy to not only help each other, but to see that supply chain does respond, and it does enable companies and individuals to have a better life. And that's really where we start. And it's a better world through supply chain, through the individuals, and more importantly, the supply chain professionals that we interact with. I want to thank everybody for making time today. Tanya, I know that we have a little bit of time for some Q&A, so I'll leave it up to you in terms of how many questions you want to take.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Abe. Very interesting, insightful. I think that anybody that's in supply chain management who always looking for a career should be seriously looking to these certifications. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to put to Abe? Raise your hand.
Lorato has one.
There we go. Lorato, shoot.
Hey, Abe, very great presentation. Thank you so much. First, I want to say thank you for the principles on demand. I was one of the people who took the opportunity to take it through, and I also got some of the people that I worked with and assisted to get through the course. So that was a really great initiative from AECM. For me, the big thing is, how do we get the message across to organizations that it's not necessary for them to cut training in their budgets, and more especially when it comes to supply chain? Because yes, everybody right now is saying supply chain, but reality is when it comes to cutting costs, the first place they look to cut is within the supply chain.
I agree with you, Loretta. Thank you for that. It has been quite a conundrum to us. They had to, in the past, either in recessions or in terms of disruptions, that we've seen organizations view training and professional development as discretionary, which is really disheartening. I don't understand how you can view talent development as discretionary, that you turn it on and off like a light switch. And I think those organizations that have succeeded over the long run, not just in short-term bursts, have committed to their training and their development, their staff development, irrespective of market conditions. I'd love to see that organizations collectively recognize the value of professional development. more often than not, we've seen organizations, to your point, pull back because they view it as discretionary. And then when the market conditions turn around, their belief is that they can buy the individuals or poach them from other organizations. Very short-sighted, because that's not a long-term commitment to your employees. And I think employees have to make a decision as well. And that if you are with an organization that does invest in your career and that does provide you professional development opportunities, is to stay with that employer. Those are organizations that are committed to your professional development. Those organizations that poach and don't train their employees on a consistent basis, I would say that you have a decision to make relative to whether they're the employer of choice or not. I would, from my perspective, the job hopping, because the job opportunities are so significant right now, organizations are willing to pay more for supply chain professionals. So we often see job hopping right now for the additional compensation. I would say that's a short-sighted for the employees as well. And that jumping just for salary and not taking a look at organizations' commitment to professional development, I think in a lot of respects, hamstrings you from your career development. If an organization is willing to hire somebody from another organization, they're most likely willing to replace you with somebody else. And so we believe that organizations' commitment to employees has to be matched by employees' commitment to their employer. And so it's a two-way street. And so the first step is to organizations that do not only invest in their employees, but maintain that investment irrespective of market conditions. I think those organizations will succeed over the long run. But at the same time, we'd like to see that employees commit to those employers that do invest in their careers.
Thank you, Abe.
I think that we all face the same challenge, and it's a discussion that is frequently had all the time. That the first thing that goes anywhere is the education, training, development budget. And that's the one area where you should be pumping your money, especially now with the challenges that supply chain management face. Where does it leave us? If we don't have skilled, knowledgeable people that are able to deliver on the job, especially in these challenging times, where does it leave an organization? Any other questions here? Before we go to, we've got one or two questions that we want to run through a poll. So Jenny, would you like to fire those up for us? Okay. Did you make a conscious decision to have a career in supply chain management, or did you just fall into the profession?
That's now 38 out of 50 who've answered the question. Come on, everybody.
Some people need a definition as to what career they're in.
It's very interesting, because normally if we ask this question somewhere, the general consensus is I fell into it. It wasn't a career.
Yeah, it'd be less than 25%. I mean, I've asked this question everywhere. But I think we also have probably a little bit of a skewed population here.
Yeah. Oh, you saying we're old?
No. I think we've cherry-picked our supply chain professionals for this event.
So, I mean, this poll to me demonstrates that there's definitely a rise in recognition of supply chain as a profession of choice. We always talk about it having a bad rap or a bad reputation, not something sought after, but clearly that is changing, which is a good sign, We can look forward to more up and coming supply chain professionals. There was another one.
Yeah, there was, but kind of a bit of a technical glitch.
Okay, so let me ask the question then, and you can literally just do the clapping hands. Maybe that's easier. Then I don't all think that you're asking questions. How many of you within your organizations have been subject to some serious poaching of your employees? Anywhere within supply chain. Let's not pick a role, anywhere within supply chain. Nobody.
Didn't they get the question?
Sorry?
I did not get the question.
Oh, so have you had employees from your organization that have been poached by another company? So they've been offered a job with better money to move from your company to their company?
Yes, yeah, I have.
Okay. Is that because you spend money on development?
Tanya, can I please intervene here? Companies do not want to spend money on training. They want ready-made talent. They neglect their internal staff members that are already doing the job. Then what happens is this internal staff member, he realizes that he's been doing the job for 10 years and now the company just decides to go and get somebody from outside. So what he does is he goes and he upskills himself or herself, and then he leaves and he goes to a better company. But what his original company is not understanding is this individual has been there for 10 years. For example, he understands your culture. He understands your product. He understands your vision. He's taking all of that and going out. You've got a new guy now with 2 stars on his shoulder, but you're going to take another 5 years to train his mind to think like your company culture. And in that time, you've lost the battle. So yeah, there needs to be a little bit of a awareness in organizations that, you know, training is not just securing your tax returns from the government, but it's inputting something for the better of your company.
100%.
Yeah, Tanya, Glenda here. Just want to make a comment.
Yes.
I think when it comes to supply chain training, what I found throughout my career is that organizations did not understand what supply chain is. So they could not train individuals on supply chain or upskill them in supply chain. It is, however, changing right now. And what I've seen in the last couple of years is that organizations are upskilling their people on supply chain because they have somewhat understanding. Whereas before they never had that understanding. They would do training, but training in various areas except supply chain.
Agreed. And more to the point on Rolf's comment as well about it not being a tax write-off. We shouldn't be looking to the CETA grants for funding and for BBBE points. You should be doing it because it's what you need for your organization to work better and to add value to the economy ultimately.
But I also think that the responsibility lies on us as supply chain professionals to educate the different industries that we come from as to what our profession is about. Yes, right now COVID-19 has shown people that supply chain is such an important skill to have. But people speak supply chain, they don't understand what they're still saying, just my opinion. So I just think that we as professionals that knows what supply chain is, we should continue to educate people on our profession. And currently, I'm very proud of my profession. Always have been.
Yeah, Glenda, you're making a really good point here, and that is we evolved from no understanding of what supply chain was into this perception that supply chain is a thing, that it's just one activity, just fix supply chain, just get me my products. And I think to your point right now, I think we've got to explain the diversity and the harmony and synchronization that's required in supply chain right now across the enterprise, and how wide this is. It's not just an individual, it's not just one activity. It's a very complex, highly integrated activity. And I think this is the next sort of, challenge that we have for supply chain, is explaining that it's not a thing. Yes. And that it's multiple activities on a highly synchronized, highly organized effort.
Yeah, and from my experience, Ian, I mean, what I've seen is that in companies, they form supply chain departments, and then that to them is supply chain.
Yeah.
So now you come in, you're like, this is not supply chain. This is one element.
Yeah,
Supply chain
exactly.
is the entire business. So again, it goes back to us as professionals to actually educate the various industries that we all come from on what is supply chain. What does that terminology mean?
Hello. Well, I think Glenda, you already answered what I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask that I like how he mentioned that supply chain is not a profession itself, is a cross-function of activities. I'm a pharmacist by background in distribution, quality and compliance now, and I'm involved in warehouse transportation. And as much as I bring my pharmacy expertise, I've got so much gap, and I appreciate the sapix local in South Africa. I've got so much gaps in improving, you know, the supply chain part of it. So I was going to ask, is it still necessary for organization to have a supply chain department? Does everyone need to have this basic understanding across the organization? Because it's everywhere, in every department, from plan, source make, is supply chain across. So I think Glenda already went there. Do we still need to have supply chain department, you know, and as an individual in an organization, how do you bring up about this discussion that, okay, I am a pharmacist, I'm in distribution warehousing, but I've got this gap, I need to fill up this gap. Yeah.
You bring up a really good point, and that is, where does supply chain sit? And where is leadership within the supply chain? And a good sort of example of this is that there are only two functions in an organization that have to know everything that goes on in the company. The first is finance. Nothing goes on in an organization without finance having a role either in the investment or in the pricing or in the expense category. The finance professionals have to have a keen understanding of what goes on in the organization so that they can make informed decisions. The other is supply chain. Supply chain has to know everything that goes on in the company, from raw materials to production, to manufacturing, to warehousing, delivery, recycling, reusing. Supply chain has a role in every aspect of the company. But we don't see leadership and we don't see investment in supply chain the way that you see it in the finance activities. And it's not a recognition that supply chain has that impact across the enterprise in every aspect of the organization. Those companies that are highly integrated in terms of their supply chain and have an understanding across the company and deep within their workforce are much more successful. And I think this is where, to your point, the recognition of supply chain has to be across the enterprise, not within a particular department.
Okay, thank you, Abe, and I appreciate how you explained the CLTD. I'm looking forward to do that course. I've done the free distribution, introduction to distribution and basics. It was a very good introduction course. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a couple of, I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a couple of free content areas from the Principles on Demand as well as CLTD. And again, it's just a way for individuals to see what this is all about. It is entry level. It is a way for them to see that there are opportunities to upskill themselves.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gamu. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, Tanya, I was about to say, I see Martin put a note there about CETAs, but I find it quite frustrating that companies have actually paid for the training and education, but then they don't take it up. And the CETAs are sitting there, brands, and it's not getting used, but they've already paid for the education. Why don't they just get on and do it and claim the money back? Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's it also goes back to what's accredited and what's accepted in their view and how they see it. There's a lot of red tape, and it's very difficult to navigate through the CETA system. And I mean, in a lot of cases, and I may get hung out to dry for this, but in a lot of cases, the content, the material that we have locally that is accredited and is acceptable to be funded through a CETA is nowhere near the quality that it should be, when you cannot even compare it to the Apic certification. So, you know, therein lies our problem.
And it doesn't even cover a lot of the new stuff that we're putting out there, like demand driven. I mean, there's nothing out there that's demand driven. So, I mean, how are you going to educate people in demand driven if there's not any accredited courses? There's just no decent material out there. Yeah, it's quite frustrating.
No, I
Sorry, Tanya. I think for me, I'd like to push sapix, and perhaps ACM can assist, but I'd like to push sapix because a lot of companies that come to us and say, we want to do Apic certifications for our employees, they come back and say, well, what can I claim back? What level can I claim back? And we can't offer that for them because it's not SACA accredited or recognized. So I'd really like to push SAPIX to try and fight the bureaucracy to get us as instructors to be able to provide these courses because companies really do want to do it, but because there's no benefit to their skills development, then for them it doesn't make sense. They would rather go for those CETAs that you guys are mentioning right now, which don't even cover a part, you know, not even a small little part of the chain that needs to be trained.
No, Lorato, absolutely. And we as SAPIX are trying to engage with the Foreign Qualification Department at SACWA. To say it's a challenge is an understatement, but we carry on regardless. Something that will be of interest to all of you in South Africa, the new TETA qualifications that have been developed reference a lot to the Apix material. A lot of the content within those qualifications refers directly to the Apix certifications. So that being said, that should force the hand of recognition of the Apix certifications. It should definitely serve to our advantage, let me put it that way. So I hear your pain, Narata, and it's an argument that we have on a daily basis. Okay, so if there are no other questions or no other comments.
Sorry, Tanya, I just got a question for Abe.
Yes.
I noticed on one of his slides, he had, I just want to flick through my photos here quickly. I think it was one of their partnership slides. The ASCM Foundation, one of the areas that you guys touch on is STEM. If I want to find out more information with regard to that and trying to get into touch with somebody with regard to that, how would I go about it? Can I contact your organization directly?
Yep, contact me and then CC Jenny and the folks at SAPIC so we can coordinate and make sure that you get the appropriate information. But absolutely, just send me a note and copy Jenny and we'll get you the information.
Yeah, because I try to Google and try and find stuff, but it's almost like trying to search for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, sometimes it is a little bit cumbersome. I will tell you that's one of the things that we've accelerated is our digital transformation. So we haven't backed off on this. So bear with us while we navigate two sites, ASCM and Apix, and it will be one. Our hope is within the next probably 4 to 6 weeks that we'll get on a single site. It'll be much easier, but absolutely, I'd be more than happy to send you the information. Just send us your contact and we'll be more than happy to put it out. And then maybe we'll put it out on the SAPIX website as well, so we can have access to it.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So I mean, if any of you have got any questions like Estelle's question or any information that you'd like to get from ASCM or Apix, please reach out to the SAPIX office. Contact Jenny or myself for information. If there's no more questions or comments, I would like to say a very big thank you to you, Abe, for your time this afternoon, well, your morning, and for sharing this information with us. Very insightful, informative, and very necessary, especially in the times that we're in now. Supply chain has never been as important as it is right now. So, to make you all aware, as supply chain professionals, is your responsibility to raise the level of the profession, make people understand what supply chain management is, and push for that education. And like Glenda says, personally, you need to drive for it yourself as well. You've got to take the lead in your own development. So thank you, Abe. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. The webinar has been recorded and will be made available on our website. Thanks, you.
Tanya. Stay safe and healthy to everybody. All the best.
Thanks, Abe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a nice afternoon. Bye.
Thank you. you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.